how I really look at networking is it's just building relationships with people, like as simple as that.
Interesting. The relationships you form actually are, it kind of paves the way for what presents to you.
Right? And they vouched for me, and that allowed me to get my next co-op, right? So for me, I felt the power of networking. But I walked up to the Deloitte booth and I said, hey, do you guys have any jobs that you're offering for like this upcoming summer? And so I didn't say anything else. That's the only thing I said. And they all just stood there and looked. Okay, I really thought it was a transactional relationship because that's how I thought of networking, all corporate and whatever it is, right? But I think the truth is that it really just is a relationship.
Right. So confidence, second is be human and be open to learn. What if I ask you to crash into a random party where you have to just walk in, where you don't know anyone, and then you have to speak to them? Networking can feel a bit like that. It's exciting for sure, but then it's also a little intimidating. We all have those moments. The one and the first time where you realize a connection's actually paid off. But then we also have those awkward encounters that make you cringe a little. In today's episode, we are diving into this world with Nathan Rubini, a Bachelor of Business Administration student and president of the Entrepreneurship Cell at Wilfrid Laurier. Nathan has had a wealth of experience building and maintaining those meaningful connections and relationships. He's seen it firsthand how the right relationships can shape careers, open doors, and spark ideas. Well, we'll talk about those game changing wins when a handshake or a quick chat turned into something meaningful. The fails were the ones that definitely teaches you lessons you will never forget. Plus, we'll also dive into the practical tips for building those strong, meaningful connections, keeping them authentic, finding your own style, whether you're a fan of, say, in-person meetups or prefer the digital world. So, if you have ever wondered what people really get wrong about networking or how it makes less transactional and then more forced or make it more human, well, stick around. Nathan's got some great insights, some great advice that might just change how you approach your next conversation at these networking events. Let's get started. Hey everyone, and hey Nathan. Welcome to the Growth Chakra and episode 6 of networking. Mastering the art of networking is really crucial, and I'm happy that you're here to share everything to our audience and viewers. How are you doing today, Nathan?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing good as well. Thank you. I always said like networking can be a bit tricky, right? It's always like, and this is what I always say, it's like you walking into that crowded party, but then you don't know anyone. So you're kind of making those connections, you're making those new, you're having those discussions, I would say. And then people feel overwhelmed, people feel that okay, it's really great. Sometimes they don't understand or are not clear as to what exactly to do in a networking event or if they are meeting some people, right? And I'm happy to have you here, happy to have a chat with you, but before we get started, I think I would want to get started with this, right? What according to you would be the right approach, or what does networking mean to you?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think networking is obviously looked at in many angles by many different people, right? In business settings, there's networking. In sort of regular settings, there's networking. But how I really look at networking is it's just building relationships with people, like as simple as that, right? So in any situation, whether you have friends or anything, you're building relationships with them. There's trust between two people or multiple people, right? And so I think when you're looking at networking and how it's often looked in a business setting, it's building that same kind of relationship, right? You're building trust with someone, you're asking someone questions, you're getting help from someone, or you're helping someone, right? So it's, for me, and how I think of networking is, as I mentioned, it's just relationship building, right? As
Right.
simple as that, whether it's professional life or personal life. I just keep it simple as that. Yeah.
No, that's interesting. The relationships you form actually are, it kind of paves the way for what presents to you in your life tomorrow, right? So
Exactly.
was there any moment, a specific moment that you can think of where, you felt like networking actually truly paid off for you, right? It kind of brought you that amount of value, amount of experience, and you kind of learned better building those relationships. So if you want to, kind of walk us through that.
Yeah, so to give you some background, right? Coming into a business school, obviously you get a little overwhelmed with all these bigger companies that you've just sort of heard of right when you enter. And so for me, it was more so around like internships is where I sort of learned more about networking. And to go answer your question, one of the powerful moments for me was sort of learning how to speak with people, and that's how it started. And that allowed me to land my first internship, just being able to build relationships with people and sort of, I feel like lucking out as well.
Yeah.
But going a bit deeper, obviously, into your question, what helped me was when I was able to get experience in this internship, I sort of took advantage of that. So what I did was I was trying to learn on the fly of how to actually have coffee chats with people.
I
So it
see.
would be reaching out with people on sort of the internal communication network that I had within this company. And so I started building these relationships with multiple different people, right? I started asking them how their day was, or just reaching out to them like blindly and just talking about sports or something that I found that we had in common. I wanted to build that relationship with them, right? And as I mentioned from the first question. And so to go a little deeper, right? So I was able to build a relationship with someone who had a job opportunity for my next co-op as well. And so
Right.
instead of having to sort of go down that process into that co-op process of applying to job after job after job and, blindly applying, right? It's very difficult that way. For me, I was grateful that because I was able to build this connection, right? And that because I
Mm.
was able to forge this relationship with this person, they vouched for me, right? And they vouched for
Got
me,
it.
and that allowed me to get my next co-op, right? So for me, I felt the power of networking because, as I mentioned, coming into university, you really don't know how it works. And so then when you actually meet someone and you try to be very genuine and honest with someone, they
Mm.
sort of see that you're willing to learn. And so that for me was something where I learned, like, yeah, I networked and I was able to get that next opportunity that allowed me to boost my resume and boost my career as well, but also show that, I can help people just as much as people help me. And so trying to continue that sort of process in saying, okay, how can I network as well to maybe land another job or maybe learn something new, right? So there's so much power behind it. And I'd say that's probably the example I'd choose.
Oh, no, that's definitely right. Because if you see, it's like building genuine relationships. And I think I
Yeah,
picked this up what you mentioned, right? As in, you talk about sports, you talk about something that connects both of you, right? And
right.
that makes it easy. Because once you start having those conversations, people don't remember you as, another person who just had a professional conversation with you,
Yeah,
at a workplace or something. But then someone who is really interested to know about your life, your journey, the way you have what your story is. So I think that's really crucial, because if you see, people actually, when they go to networking, even they kind of get overwhelmed. And I think because they don't really want to know more about the other person
yeah,
or genuinely make those connections, right? So they're
yeah,
they're trying to just scratch the surface, not go a bit into the depth of understanding what their potential is, like how you mentioned, right? um, and I think this is very crucial, because if you see that the long term goals and the aspects of it, you build those networks which will help you, maybe in your job interview, or maybe something that will boost your, again, your resume, or someone who is willing to give you those references in future. So I think this is really crucial. And I think I would like to ask this question as well, like, did
yeah.
you have your biggest, like, not biggest, at least a networking fail, and then I think this is more to understand about your areas where you improved, how you improved, something where what you
Yeah,
learned from it, right? Because I believe everyone has their story. Everyone who is just doing and getting started the first time, it's really crucial for them to know and understand. And it might be overwhelming. It would have been overwhelming for you as well, right?
yeah. No, there definitely were a lot of fails. And I would say the biggest one for me happened in my first year. So I'll put some background on it. I was part of a club, and basically I was at a corporate relations position. So that meant we reached out to companies to try to bring them into this networking event. So I was in close contact with some companies. I invited them to this networking event. And so I was like, okay, now it's time for me to network. So, I go there all confident. I've got my suit on and everything. So I walk up to the Deloitte booth, and I tell this story a
Mm.
lot, but I walked up to the Deloitte booth and I said, hey, do you guys have any jobs that you're offering for like this upcoming summer? And so I didn't say anything else. That's the only thing I said. And they all just stood there and looked at me for a second and said, okay, like, we don't. Like, what year are you in? And so they started asking questions like that. And for me, I was like,
Mm.
okay, that was a total fail. And so it goes back to your point, because you're talking more, and you sort of touch on a little bit. It's transactional versus relationship building, right? That transactional relationship you see a lot. It's the biggest mistake I see with networking, right? People try to build relationships with other people, or they try to like talk to people or have coffee chats with people because they
Right.
want something out of it, right? They just want that like job, they want that reference, they want whatever it is. And so for me, I was in that exact same mindset when I went to that Deloitte booth. I said, okay, they're there for me to talk to them. I want that transactional relationship that they can tell me, there's the jobs that we're offering, and maybe they can give me a reference. But the truth be told and the way I think about it is, put yourself in their shoes, right? If you saw someone that you didn't know that came straight up to you and asked you for a job or asked you for a reference, how much trust are you going to put behind them, right? You don't know who they
Definitely.
are. You don't know their interests. You don't know what program they're in. You don't know anything about them. And so for me and how I think about networking is it's saying, can you build these genuine relationships with people
Mm,
so that they can eventually vouch for you? And don't think about it like you're only building these relationships so that they can help you. But over time, you start to realize, okay, these people can actually be your friends too. And so,
right.
when someone actually comes to you, like for example, if you're now sort of established in your career and they say, hey, I want to learn about, your interest in sports, and they talk to you all the time. And then sort of they bring up another topic and show that they're interested in something else, right?
Mm,
It's you start to actually want to help them. It's like a friend, right?
definitely.
You'd help a friend.
I
And
see.
so that's
Yeah.
how I think about it. I think that fail for me was that transactional piece that I was missing a lot. It was saying that, okay, I really thought it was a transactional relationship because that's how I thought of networking, all corporate and whatever it is, right? But I think the truth is that it really just is a relationship. It really just is
I see.
building trust between people. So
Right. No, and I get it. I think it's also about getting those, even before you ask, I feel like this is I think a mantra that I follow, right? You keep giving, at least 3 or 4 times before you ask something. So in this
yes,
case, it's more like, you can maybe offer help, maybe, help them, connect with the right people. Maybe
yeah,
you're trying to get those relationships before even having the bond that you share, a relationship, where you see from a networking lens.
yeah,
It's important that you start giving and start contributing. That'll help them gain something, right, before
yeah,
you can actually ask something. Because in this case, we've always taken a lot, right? Like throughout our life, and this is what I believe, we always ask, but then how much are we willing to contribute and then give back? So I feel like when you touch a point over there where you're saying about how you want to build those connections, but then maybe kind of give your story as well, right? Kind of bring that a sense of how you really want to take this
yeah,
forward. Maybe your friend, maybe it can happen that they're part of your, group of friends, then, that you actually had. Now,
yeah,
someone who is not just, in a professional setting, but then on a more personal level, where you can really get to know, you're catching up, and then I think having, making those transactional moves to wherever you want to reach, right? But the question still lies, right? Like, I understand with all these, the help, the strengths, I would say, of networking, again, areas of improvement, and I kind of come back to that, right? What are some of the things that you feel usually, like, people, apart from lacking in the conversational abilities, apart from the creating those relationships, building those relationships on a transactional basis, is there anything else that you think
mhm.
some of them might be figuring things out, or maybe not that good at?
Yeah, so you're asking sort of these areas that people can improve on. You're saying,
Mm-hmm.
like I think some of the bigger ones for me, I think are like confidence. I think imposter syndrome is the biggest thing that people feel. Everybody feels imposter syndrome. People, you don't really know what you want to do in the future. There's a lot of people in that sense. For me, it was a lot of imposter syndrome. I think that just comes with confidence, right?
I
Um,
see.
if you think about networking as relationship building and just talking to someone, people will open up to you more and you'll get more opportunities. So confidence is probably one of the bigger things. It's hard to build, right? But when you're in those moments, you have to understand that like you have to sort of like, as you mentioned, talk about yourself as well. Talk about the things you're doing, but also ask people about themselves. Like be as curious
Mm.
as possible. The second thing I would probably say is just like being able to adapt in conversations, right? I think, a lot of times people are sticking to a script, right? They walk in and they say, hey, like I want to learn about you. And then obviously
Yeah.
that conversation could go silent and then
Yeah.
it's like, okay, this is
Definitely.
awkward. But it's more so adapting. It's like asking questions, even making jokes, like trying to be as human as possible, right? Like I think that's the word there. It's just being human. Because really, it's like a lot of people think networking is like this business transaction, as I mentioned.
Yeah.
Like you have to be professional, you talk to a robot, ask these questions. It's really just being human, right? So confidence, I'd say, being able to adapt in conversations. As you mentioned, like there's that professional and communication ability, right? So
Mm.
like also try to learn a lot about the person you're talking to before you talk to them, right? Like go on their LinkedIn if you can. Try and learn about their the jobs they've had in the past. Try to start up conversations like that. Do your research is one of the bigger ones too. Like do your research on them and the questions you can ask them. Like I'll give you an example. Like where I'm working now, my boss is sort of very into sports as well. I think it's like rugby or something, right? So for me, what I did was like I went on his LinkedIn and I tried to learn a little bit more about like what his interests were, so that I could start conversations when I got on the job.
That's good.
It takes effort. It definitely does take effort, but it's worth it if you want to build those relationships with people, right?
I see.
You got to
Yeah.
find their interests and try to sort of wiggle your way into that.
Okay. No, I see that, right? So confidence, second is be human and be open to learning about the other person, and then maybe research a bit, right? Those are the three
Yeah,
things where I think people can also improve. And I think adding to this, right, the confidence also increases, I think, the credibility because
exactly.
people no longer see you as someone who is not ready, someone, but instead they kind of see you as someone who is willing to put those efforts and again be connecting your point, right, is to be human but also to learn about them, to learn something new, right? Maybe I'm someone who isn't, doesn't know a lot about rugby, right? But then maybe if you're talking to me about it, I think being present in the moment, being able to listen carefully instead of hearing, I think there's a lot of difference as well between the both, right? As listen over there, listen to what the person is talking about, and then kind of being able to also do the research so that you can, see if there are any synergies that you have that can grow your relationship, grow your networking journey together, and then give you opportunities, right? No, that's fantastic, Nathan. So say for instance, like I'm someone who is, new to networking. I'm really overwhelmed. I'm someone who is not aware of what exactly to do in a networking session, right? So, or let me just say I'm walking into the crowded party where I don't know anyone. Right. So, what are some of the things or practical things that you feel can help the people, maybe students, maybe new grads, maybe people who are trying to, build their relations, maybe someone who's in their new role and they want to, expand their networking skills. So, what do you think there are 3 or 4 practical skills that they can, kind of approach towards?
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't focus on it, but I think walking in, let's say, let's play out the scenario, right? Like walking into a crowded networking session. There's companies, there's booths. They probably won't
Yeah.
remember your name. Let's say, so the first thing that I would say is probably, and it's a small thing, but I would say posture is one of the bigger ones that I think about. Walking into a place, right? You want people to think, as you mentioned, that you're someone that's confident. I think it does start with posture. Like you show that, hey, like I'm here to meet you.
Yeah.
I'm here to learn about you, but I'm also confident, and you can see that in my body language, right? Body language, I feel like, is one of the most important things. The second thing I would say is be honest. Be as honest as you
Mm.
can. Um, at a booth, and I've boothed actually for my university as well, so I've been on both sides of the networking sessions or whatever you want to call it. But people just sort of lie about their experiences. They're like, I've done this, I'm interested in this. And how I think about it is, for me, right? I don't really know exactly what I want to do in the future, but I know that
Yeah.
I'm someone who's sort of very ambitious, right? I want to learn, I want to sort of, I'm curious, right? So being able to be honest to people and tell them, I'm in this situation, trying to relate to them, say, you've probably been in this situation before as well. What's some advice you can give me, right? Let me learn about you. How did you get to where you were? People love to talk about
Mm.
themselves, so ask them questions about themselves.
I see.
Another thing as well is, there's posture. There's obviously, as I mentioned, being honest with someone. And also, when you're in a networking session, just start small. Find someone that, for me, what I try to do is find someone that's also walking up to these booths as well, another student or something, and ask them, hey, what are you looking to get out of this networking session? Try to build a relationship with people who are in the exact same spot as you. And so that'll build your confidence to say, okay, I'm talking to a student right now. Now let me go to a
Mm.
booth. And so
I
you're like getting a bit warmed up, right? There's definitely a lot of other little things you can do, but I think starting with that is probably some of the things I would like, the smaller things I would do. And then ultimately, it's, as we mentioned before, like when you go to that booth, being confident, asking about the person, doing your research, those things all play in. But I think the small things is like that's how you'll gain confidence in those situations.
I see. Okay. No, that's totally there. And another thing, I feel like voice modulation along with your posture, right? Because your confidence at the end is like a summation of both definitely how you present. And I think this is one more thing, right? When it comes to presentation, I've seen people who are, maybe wearing casual, so just going because if you're going into professional networking, I feel it's very important. And then this is something that, I wanted to add upon as well. I've seen people who will be, maybe they have wrinkled shirts, maybe they are not, confident, maybe they're not ready, right? Sometimes it's like their hair is messy, but we'll really have to realize this, that if you go in a networking session, if you really want to gain something out of it, you do have to put in effort. So maybe, iron your shirt, maybe, just comb your hair and make your hair right
Yeah,
proper, maybe the voice modulation, um, and being able to give a firm handshake, right? Now, these are all the small things that actually matter, but then they really, really pay off in the long run because I feel these are all the things that you want to keep, track of. Definitely, it's someone who is starting. when you're starting something, it's never easy, right? It's always difficult, but it's over a period of time that you start growing and gaining those experiences, those skills and everything, right? So no, I truly agree to what you said, Nathan, and I feel like getting those conversations, and I really like your idea when you said, start small, even if it's like with your peer who
Hmm.
is giving you or gaining the confidence, which you can eventually move on and speak to companies. Maybe you can speak to all these different managers who are out there, or even if at the booth, right? Or anywhere in general in networking, right? But when you consider the strategy itself, right, like how I want to have, say, a conversation, maybe the conversation I have with the peer is way different. Maybe it's easier for me because I can connect with the student, say for instance. But then when I'm having it, say with the manager or someone at the booth, right, and I want to request some more details, maybe I want to get a job, maybe I want to find if there are opportunities in future, right? How do you make sure that those connections that you have, you're maintaining those connections, right? Like without feeling forced, without being able to, feel a bit, I don't know, it's not, I would not call it fake, but it's not natural either, right? You see how it's like scripted, let me put it that way. So instead of that, how do you make it more transactional, I would say?
Like I would say, especially at a networking session, if you're everybody, all the people who are boothing, their LinkedIn's will probably be there, so you can connect with them.
Hmm.
So how I like to think about it is, you're gonna probably want to reach out to a lot of these people, and a lot of them may not respond, right? Like that's the truth. But on top of that, it's more about how I do it. Is I bring something up. So I'd get their LinkedIn, I'd message them after and say, we talked about this. I'd like
Hmm.
to sort of like, I'm more interested in this. Maybe we can
I
continue this
see.
conversation. It seems less like I'm sending the exact same message to every single person, right? It seems more tailored to this specific
You're
person, these
following up
scope of persons.
basically.
Yeah, exactly. And so how I also think about it is, like, as I mentioned before, right? Being honest in these scenarios and opening up to people, like not fully opening up to people, but telling them about your experience, for example. Like I'm still in university, right? So talking about my experience in a course, for example, if this person I'm talking to is an alumni, right? Like you can sort of connect on different bases. And then I think from there, it's sending those tailored messages. And yeah, maybe it won't work. There's a feature on LinkedIn where you can send a message when you connect to someone. It may not work all the time, but I think trial and error is the best with networking, because at the end of the day, if you don't try, like you're not going to get anything. Right? So at least trying these little things, and maybe something stirs out of it, maybe it doesn't, but at least you can say you tried your best there. And being memorable, like as memorable as possible. And that doesn't mean you do anything stupid, but it means you sort of try to create these meaningful conversations with people and try to connect. And as I mentioned, be honest, right? Because I'm telling you, these people at these networking sessions, a lot of the people who go in, they talk about the same thing. You hear the same thing from each of these people, right? They say, I'm in this program, I'm interested in finance, can you give me advice on it? Or I'm interested in this, can you give me advice on it? But if someone comes in and says, hey, did you take this course? I'm curious what your opinion on it is. Did you like this professor? Or like, what was your experience working here? I'm
Yeah.
curious about that, right? You're asking more of these human questions, as I mentioned, right? Because the majority of people are going to go on Google or ChatGPT and figure out all these basic questions. And I think, being more memorable is probably the
Yeah.
best approach.
Yeah. Another thing I feel like, the reason I found it funny was because I exactly know what goes on, right? Like they're literally standing for 3, 4, 5 hours at those booths, and then you have so many people who are just going to them and then talking and say, hi, my name is, XYZ,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
then this is what I do. But then they've been, so used to listening to all this, and do you have any jobs, right? But instead, and then this is something that I actually did. I was really interested in one of these companies that I was, back in university. And then at one of the booths, I saw like the person's actually tired. You can see because we were like so many of us, queued up just to meet the person. And then I said, I would like you to take a moment, just drink water and maybe just feel a bit comfortable, right? And take a breath. So I feel like even such
Hmm.
conversations add up because you're giving them sometimes, you're really caring for them, and then that helps them. So once they were done with that, he's like, okay, thank you so much for helping me here, and I didn't have to do the talking then, automatically the person talking to you because they really are like, okay, this person's interesting. These small gestures actually make sense.
Yep.
They kind of help you a lot, because again, for people it's like, okay, I'm trying to go, and this is what I said, we always ask, but then very rarely we do give. And so
Right.
I'm like, okay, why don't you just take a breath, catch one breath, take a break, and then drink a little water, and then we can have a conversation for sure. This will give you some
Yeah.
time, right? And then I was just having a chat with him about the projects and everything. And then this is another piece I feel I can, add on here is slip your resume slowly, because I think what has happened so far is that people would be like, okay, there are opportunities and positions open on our career site. Please go and fill it up there. You enter into the portal, and then we would be able to, kind of sift you through. And then if you get selected, we would call you for an interview. This is a very standard approach. If you see, when you have built those connections, I feel like having those transactional way of communicating it and then getting it also done. So maybe you're like talking about, hey, I've also like worked on something similar, right? I have my resume. Do you mind picking it up, right? And then maybe I've also applied it online. So I think a mix of both,
Yeah.
handing over your resume versus giving it out in again in an application or whatever you have to fill online, right, on their portal. I think this helps. But then when you're having such conversations, right, and when you're having those uh, discussions there, it is very important and crucial that you're giving them the time to be able to breathe, to be able to have a chat. Sometimes you just want to talk something out of the box and just say, maybe not even related to the reason why you are there, but then bringing it slowly. And I think I would like to connect it to where you said about, maybe it's sports, maybe it's about their pet, right? Sometimes I've also seen like recruiters who have come again. They're the repeat people who kind of, managers who are at the booths, who are assigned there, the HR specifically. And then sometimes they would have told you about something, maybe like their pet or cat or dog or anything, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes, why? How's your cat doing? Because you would remember, and very important, try remembering people's names,
Yeah.
right? What do you say, Nathan, about that? It's like really helpful there?
Yeah, no, I think as you mentioned, these little things, right? Remembering people's names, remembering these like small little details about them gets you very far because then they're like, okay, that person's actually, aware, right? They're actually like spending time trying to pick on these little things and then try to bring
Yeah.
them up. It's like, okay, maybe they're like, okay, like yeah, you're bringing this up, but at the same time, they're seeing that character aspect of you, right? Like that's
Mm.
who you are. You're someone that is actually putting a lot of effort into it, right? There's people that reach out to me a lot of the time and just sort of ask me the same thing, and then when they come on the call, they're like at the end, hey, can you give me a reference, right? And so for me, I'm just like, first of all, I don't really know who you are, right? That's the
Yeah,
first thing. And that's not like a rude thing. That's the truth, right? Like, what would you do if you put yourself in my shoes in that situation, right?
I get
So
it.
to
Yeah.
add on to your point there, like learning about these small things, like handshakes, even right, firm handshakes. I remember when I was in grade 9, actually, of high school, we had a full 2-hour session on how to do a handshake. But those things are important, right? Because like people remember that, or at least people remember when you don't give a good handshake. Like it's there's little things, and I think to focus on them is a very good starting point, I think.
Hmm. Okay, no, that's good. And I think I have like this question that's kind of lingering when I'm talking about this. We've always talked and spoken about in-person networking events, right? But then the onset of COVID, and then when that time 2020 was like a totally different time. So you had like your online networking, right, where you would be put out in breakout rooms or things like that, and then you'll have to network, you'll have to chat, and then do that, right? So my question to you, and I think maybe one word answer, and then we will kind of understand better as to why did you choose that, right? So do you prefer in person or online networking?
I would say in person,
In
100%.
person.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay, so I understood a bit, and I kind of figured out it might be in person for sure. Now let's say for someone who isn't getting that opportunity, and
yeah,
they go with, say, online or digital networking, right? How does someone balance like both of those? What's something to remember when it comes to online networking going digital
yeah.
versus in-person networking?
Yeah. So I think digital networking, I'd call it a tool in my opinion,
Mm.
because it's very easy to connect to people online because, everybody has sort of a computer in front of them, right? So it's easy. Versus in person, it takes travel time. People may not be as lenient of doing these things. So how I think about it is in person or online as a tool because it's your starting point to gain connection to this person. As for small things when you are talking to people, join the meeting early. Make sure you're in a good like. I feel like I don't need to say these things, but I will say them. Make sure your setting or your background as you're like in that networking session is very professional. I would say make sure you're wearing something nice. Obviously, as you mentioned, like make sure your hair is nice. Make sure like you're suited up, or you don't have to go in a suit, but make sure you're like dressed nice as
Just
well.
formals, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then also, your mannerisms and how you sort of communicate. Make sure you're obviously being very nice to someone, right? Be very open. Smile a lot. Like there's little things that you can do.
Yeah.
And don't get distracted. Like don't go on your phone. Those are small things as well. Because when you're online, right, it's very easy to get distracted. Like you have other things going on in the
Yeah,
background. Like
yeah.
maybe you have another tab open with questions. Maybe you have whatever. So make sure that you're also treating it like an in-person conversation. Make sure it's like this person's sitting right in front of you at a table. How would you act with them? You're looking at the camera. You're dressed nicely, right? Those are the small things. But going back, and the reason why I say in person is because using online to get connected with someone, people are more willing to give their time away if when they shut their laptop, they're still in their house, right? It's a lot easier that way for them. But once you build that relationship with someone, right? Once you build that connection with someone, they're going to probably be more willing to, I don't know, go to a coffee shop or go out for dinner or do something, right? And so that's why it is a tool. Like I would say in person is better, but it can start with online. And a lot of times it does, especially in my experience. And then you start to meet people, right? You build these connections with people in person, and then you actually enjoy spending time with this person, and they vouch for you, and you help them, and that's kind of just how it goes from there. Yeah.
So do you like connect with them on LinkedIn, maybe, set up a coffee chat there,
Yeah.
and then you go ahead with an in-person networking? Is that how you do usually?
Yeah, so usually what I would do is it starts with online, especially if it's through LinkedIn. Say, for example, I'm
Hmm.
at like a networking session. Obviously, there's circumstances where this person that you're networking with happens to be in your university and they just want to meet
Yeah.
at the local coffee shop. Like that happens. Let's say it doesn't. You could start online. I would say having like multiple calls before you ask for anything, right? Take your time with it. Like don't ask for things right away. And that can all be virtual, right? But then once you sort of get connected with them, you can be like, okay, you know what? I actually really like where you work. It sounds very interesting. Maybe I can learn more about that, right? So it starts. I would say it starts with online and building that connection. It really does
Hmm.
start with online, multiple coffee chats, maybe to even ask for something in return. But then over time, even if you sort of build trust with them, then you can sort of meet up in person from there.
Okay, okay. That's interesting take here. It's interesting how you were, going first with LinkedIn, maybe having and getting those digital connections and then
Yeah,
kind of meeting in person, right? And I feel like nonverbal communication, like gestures and things like that, especially with, when you're thinking of online networking, that helps a lot because they cannot really see you. The body language plays a role if it's in-person networking for sure, right? Your posture again, but then when you're thinking of online, having those connections when you are um, you're talking to a laptop, you're talking to a camera essentially. So how do you get those messages out? So that's crucial. Yeah, no, I get it. But
yeah,
thank you so much, Nathan. I know
yeah,
we're almost at time, and I think all the viewers, anyone who is going to watch this, I'm pretty sure they have gotten a lot to all of them watching. If you want to know or learn more about networking, if you want to feel free to get connected to Nathan, definitely make sure that you introduce before you go and ask, Nathan for a job.
yeah. 100%, 100%.
Yeah, so get to know Nathan before you just go ahead and ask him for helping you out, okay? So, but yeah, feel free to connect with him on LinkedIn. I'll be sharing the details in the description. But thank you so much, Nathan. It was
Yeah,
it was really really nice to have you, and chat with you about networking and how exactly you're helping all of them, and especially with what you're doing at your university as well. So thank
yeah,
you so
for
much.
sure. Yeah, 100%.
Okay, thank you so much, guys, and I will see you in the next episode. Till then, take care.